All right. Well, it's good to see everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is General Government Appropriations Subcommittee. Make sure everybody's in the right place. But before we get started, we're going to go to the Lord in prayer. So I'm going to ask on Representative Prince if he would do that for us.
Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you most of all for another opportunity just to do the business of this great state of Georgia, to help the constituents and all that serve it. Father, we ask that you keep your hedge of protection around us. Give us the discernment, the understanding, and some of your wisdom that we can make the right decisions. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, and just for the committee, you've got track sheets on the amended and the big budgets. We're going to be walking through both of those today. So just FYI on that. And we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to start with DOAS. Commissioner Atwood, come on down. You're the lucky one. Start us off. Good to see you again. It's like old times, huh?
Whether I'm coming before a committee or I'm about to get a fraternity haze. I'm a little concerned. It's really a thrill for me to be back with you. I've missed being up here. And
hold on a minute, Commissioner. Let me make sure everybody's on. We're on page 7 of the amended. Let's let everybody get dialed in. We good? All right, let's do it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I was saying, I'm very honored to be in front of you, and thank you for your important work that you do for your state, for our state. With me here today, which is the principal area we're going to be speaking to, is Mr. Wade Dameron, who's head of our risk management services for the Department of Administrative Services. I am Alex Atwood. I've been the commissioner for the Department of Administrative Services since March 1st of last year. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll very quickly go over our essential duties at DOAS and jump right into the budget for you. First, the Department of Administrative Services supports the governor's budget proposal. We have 5 principal business entities within the department. First and foremost, we support all the agencies, technical colleges, universities, and we offer most of our services to local governments throughout Georgia as well. We help our customers essentially do their back office functions, as they in turn can focus on serving the customers and the taxpayers. We help our customers in a myriad of different areas. We have fleet management. We manage some 20,000 vehicles, vessels, aircraft, trailers, trucks. We have a state purchasing function. We handle all the statewide contracting for the state of Georgia. About $1.1 billion in statewide spend. We have some 400 or so approximately vendors out there, a portfolio of that. We also help the agencies with their individual purchasing and contracting. We have an insurance function that protects the state's workers, the property, the cybersecurity, our tort claims. For example, we have over $100 million in cybersecurity insurance for our state alone. We have a surplus property program. We have some 6,000 auctions, online sales there. We return an average of about $3.9 million per year back to the state agencies. And we also have work with the federal surplus property program in handling some of their equipment. We have a centralized human resources program that supports the recruitment portal. We have the benefits programs besides health insurance, job classification, and compensation structures, performance management, statewide HR guidance, and compliance. We send contact teams throughout the state to help different agencies with their various challenges, be it human resources, fleet, or handling contracts. We hold a statewide procurement conference once a year. It's coming up again in Jekyll Island. Last year we had 811 attendees, 140 vendors came down there, bringing folks together to learn to do business with the state of Georgia. And we're launching our small business initiative in Dublin, Georgia on February 12th. Right now we've got 175 attendees. We wanted to do a mini version of what we did to try to grow small business in Georgia. So we're focusing on our very first one below Macon. In South Georgia, we're going to be moving on to other areas across the state, and we're going to also be teaching classes there for folks that want to come in and try to do business with the state of Georgia. We teach 55 classes at our normal big procurement conference, but what we figured was that in keeping with the Georgia First initiative with Scott Hilton that we've been working very closely with, that a small business person can't afford to be going down for 3 or 4 days to Jekyll Island. We put together a one-day program, brought agencies to come in that they may be working with, such as the Secretary of State, Department of Revenue, mirrored them up with our instructors. It's going to cost them $25, and that includes their lunch. So I'm pretty happy about that, and I'm expecting very, very great things out of that. And last but not least, we also have recently rolled out the Governor's Sexual Harassment Prevention Initiative training. We did that, as well as a couple of weeks ago, we supported the First Lady Marty Kemp and the Grace Commission in rolling out the human trafficking program that we put together. So as you can see, we are very, very busy in what we do. Bringing you to the budget itself, I think you've got your tracking sheets there in front of you. I'm looking at page 12, section 2.1. On the Certificate of Need panel, we support that program. They're housed at we support that for DCH, I should say. We have no change in the very first one, no change on 12.2, 12.3, or 12.4. In risk management, what we're looking at here is 5.6. In our workers' compensation, to increasing billing in our worker compensation program, no change in liability. On state purchasing, 12.6 and 12.7, no change. For the Office of State Administrative Hearings in 12.8, as you can see from the notes itself, we're looking at reduced funding for 3 vacant positions of $176,262, as well as reduced funding for contractual services to reflect the consolidated caseload program that they have of 94,800. And an increase of $112 for the self-insurance programs on our agency premiums. In the, excuse me, let me move my hand over here just a moment. On 12.9, Office of the State Treasurer, no change. 12.10, likewise, no change, that being on the amended budget. I'll stop for questions there.
Yes,
and
sir.
I'll
Let's
launch into the others once you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
let's maybe hold up, just check with the committee to see if we do have any questions. Number 9, Chairman Hatch.
Hello, former colleague. The CON appeal panel, as you may know, CON's near and dear to my heart. No sarcasm there. The 39,506 reduction in 2021, is that just some maneuvering of fees, as it says, or are you actually eliminating a position that handles that
For
appeal
the
process?
amended budget, there's no change.
Right.
You're talking about on the big budget?
We do it amended.
We're just doing amended right
Okay,
now, but
I'm
we'll,
sorry.
we'll be back to you.
In
a
fact,
minute.
I'll address
Anybody?
that just soon we launch into it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Okay.
You can eliminate that if you want to.
Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead.
Okay. Well,
Commissioner.
let me jump right into that in 12.1 on the certificate of need. As the yes, ma'am.
Yep.
On the big budget. At 12.1, we're looking at a reduction of $39,506 for the certificate of need appeal panel, limiting those funds and adjusting filing fees to cover the cost of certificate of need appeal hearings, which will be generated by the appellate parties. So that's going away. And right now, the fee for appeals is $1,500. Any questions? Okay. On the 12.2 through 12.4, There's no change. On 12.5, again, we're risk management. We're looking at $5 million for workers' compensation, increased billings, and $4 million for liability. No change in state purchasing, and likewise, no change in surplus property. And similar changes as within the amended budget for 12.8.1, a little over $2,000, $2,082 to reflect the adjustment in the cybersecurity insurance premiums, and then $1,108 to increase funds to provide for the $1,000 pay raise for those employees making less than $40,000. And we're looking at a reduction of funds under 12.8.4 to reduce funding for the contractual services to reflect a consolidated caseload of $136,378. No change on 12.9, and essentially zeroing out net change on 12.10. And that's all we have, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for questions.
All right, well, I'll maybe start it off with a one or two till everybody gets something going here. On the, I assume on the $1,000 raises, you only had one?
In that area, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in a lot of your attached or agencies that fall under you, do we have any employees that would have received a $1,000 raise in those agencies that are attached?
That I can't answer, Mr. Chairman. Paulette, have you got word on that? Can we address it? Don't think you have any? Okay.
Okay.
Don't believe we do, no, sir.
Okay. Good. Just making sure. Also in the risk management, I see that's going up by $9 million, and I know you mentioned that y'all were going to be trying to work on getting that lowered down. Can you just kind of tell the committee what you've got on your mind as far as trying to reduce that number?
I'm thrilled to. I was able to. Wade and I came over with some other folks and spent some time with the chairman. I think we spent some time with the vice chair and some others. And what we looked at is a great majority of our budget at DOAS falls in the realm of risk, be it liability, workers' compensation primarily. And what we're seeing there is money that can be saved as well as protecting our employees. We don't want a consistent pattern of heavy things dropping on people. We don't want 10 miles of bad road that maybe needed to be fixed and stop accidents and things like that, which I'm sure DOT works hard to prevent. But when we see medical costs increasing and other things like that, I learned that when I was in the Marine Corps and I was flying, that if we started having accidents and we had command influence and command interest in it, the accidents would drive down. So Wade and his team have done a truly outstanding job. I'll be sending a letter to all the agencies probably within about the next 2 days with support of the governor's office, with support of OPB and others that we've discussed. And it's a comprehensive loss control program. It's going to be 4 years long. And we started off with basically, and I wish I had a photo of it here for you, I should have brought it, but it's a computer program, a screen, where a risk manager would get this, and our goal is to help the agencies. That's the main purpose of DOAS, is to go out and help them. And so the person that's assigned risk management, they may have 20 other duties assigned. We want to make it as easy on them as we possibly can, yet drive down cost and drive down accidents and liability claims. So the risk manager would pull this up on his screen, and he'll have a series of questions such as, do you have a risk manual, a properly written risk manual in place at your agency? If you do, you click it, you get a positive score, you get a little green light, and we also say attach it. That way we can look at it, we can be sure that it's properly written, we can help them if they need help. and it will send them through a series of questions like that. You'll end up with a positive or a negative score, and we can see where you need help. But the big thing about this program is we've got a tremendous amount of information in DOES in our library, but you got to search for it, right? Well, we've done the searching for them. Let's say you don't have a risk manual. Well, I'm not going to make you go through the headache of searching everywhere. All you have to do is push a button, and it comes right up there for you. The templates, the manuals, the resources are right there to help you write this thing and get it done. And it helps us focus, because we don't have the biggest staff in the world, and it helps us focus on those agencies that where we will take maybe our team out and work with them and help them improve over a series of years. We're going to be holding conferences for the risk managers to train them and help them. And one other thing that this program does is they're going to be required to send it to DOAS. And not only does the risk manager have to sign off on this thing, the chief financial officer has to sign off on it. And we want some skin in the game from everybody. And ultimately, it will lead us to having a number that will, in fact, impact on their premiums they're paying. If you're doing well, if you're driving down cost, if you worked hard with this program that we've put together, then you'll pay less premiums. If not, then your premiums may be higher. So, but Wade, you got something you want to add to that, or?
Great recap, sir. No, again, we're excited about.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We're excited about the opportunity to get the program out in the field. It's a component of the comprehensive loss control program that's been around since 2008, but this revitalization allows us to get it back in front of folks at an immediate time frame. They'll have a assessment tool on their desktop, and we'll be able to give them additional feedback and provide resources to them as they go through the tools. We're real excited about it. Had the opportunity to lay it out for the Georgia Fiscal Managers Conference and talk to CFOs there. We've had a couple of different town hall meetings across the state, one in Atlanta and one in Macon, to go ahead and roll portions of it out to the risk management community, and it's been received really well. So we have a huge collaboration group that continues to work on that and get it out the door here in the next few days.
Okay, good deal. Then we got another question. Chairman Perkle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was my question that he just answered regarding risk management. Thank you.
Okay. On the vacant positions, just out of curiosity, how long have those been vacant?
Let's see.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking in the wrong. You're good.
I think
You're good.
okay. Okay.
But
All right.
yeah, we'll be bringing him in, I think, later on at a different meeting. So, all right. Anybody else? Well, you must have done a pretty good job, Commissioner.
Well,
you know how it works around here, I guess. Maybe
well,
you got some secrets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tell you, and I deeply, deeply mean this. I've been blessed to have really good folks work with me at different commands that I've had in my life. I've never had the degree of professionalism in my life that I've found with the good people at DOAS. You give them a project or an idea, or they'll come to you with ideas, and we are fortunate to have them, and it's my honor to be leading them. And so if you need anything, out of us, all you got to do is call. We'll be there for you. And I've got a manual for you for what you asked for yesterday. I'm going to drop it off in your office. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank y'all. Good job. All right. Next, we've got Director Dunn. Come on down. And that will be for the committee, we will be on page 16 in the amended, and page 17 on the 21.
Thank you,
If
Mr. Chair.
yeah,
Ready to roll?
if you'll let everybody
Okay.
flip over and get dialed in, Director. So we're on page 16 on the amended, and page 17. '21. Everybody good? All right.
Thank you, Chairman Watson, members of the General Government Appropriations Subcommittee. the Environmental Protection Division. My name is Rick Dunn. I'm the Director of EPD. I have provided in your packet a small slide deck with some details about EPD's budget. This is primarily for your reference. I'm going to be working off the tracking sheet because I think that's a lot easier to do. EPD has 3 programs under DNR. That's, as Chairman Watson mentioned, that's Section 34. Those 3 programs are Environmental Protection, which is Program 34.3, the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund, which is Program 34.5, and the Solid Waste Trust Fund, which is Program 34.9. Just a little background, the base budget for these 3 programs is $121 million in total funds. 32% or $38.4 million of that is appropriated state funds. 45% of our budget, about $54.8 million, is retained fees, and the remaining 23%, $28 million, consists of federal funds. Not fully reflected in the budget is approximately $25 million in fees we collect and remit back to the Treasury each year. About 80% of our spend, our expenditures, are in personal services, which is people, our contracts. Our fiscal year, amended fiscal year reduction target, 4% reduction target for EPD is $1.3 million, and our FY21 6% reduction target for EPD is $1.9 million. Our 2 trust funds, the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund Program and the Solid Waste Trust Fund Program, were exempt from the reductions. So those reductions you'll see solely in the Environmental Protection Program. I'll go through the governor's recommended budget budget changes in the order presented in the tracking sheets, and I'll start with the amended budget. Chairman Watson, I believe you said it was on page 16, 34.
Correct.
First item is what Commissioner Atwood just mentioned, is the statewide, it's our piece of the statewide adjustment to the DOAS risk pool at a little over $16,000. The next 2 items address our 4% budget reduction. And I will say, before getting into these budget reductions, for both the amended budget and the big budget, we have tried very hard to prioritize savings that will have the minimal amount of impact possible on our current operations, and I believe we have accomplished so, but I will talk about those in a great deal of specificity here in a moment. The first reduction, 34.3.2, is to reduce travel expenses by $100,000. We spend about $420,000 on travel each year. Most of this travel I would consider to be essential. Travel to do inspections, travel to investigate complaints, emergency response, travel to provide technical assistance to permittees, attending public meetings, et cetera, et cetera. Our reduction in travel expenses will not touch any of that essential travel. Instead, what we're trying to focus upon is saving money in travel by focusing on non-essential travel, such as travel to conferences or to internal meetings. I think I mentioned this at the joint hearing. We have a lot of staff spread out through the state, and frequently those staff get together, usually on a monthly basis. Some of those meetings now will be held through teleconference to save money on travel expenses. We have a lot of professional staff, a lot of engineers, geologists, environmental specialists. They attend a lot of conferences. We're going to try to save money on that. If they get asked to speak at a conference, we're going to insist that the sponsor pay for travel to that conference. And instead of sending 3 or 4 people from our program to a conference, they'll send 1 person, and they'll report back of the findings of what the essential information was at that conference. And I will say, through the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we are on track to realize that $100,000 savings. 34.3.3, replace state funds with federal funds for contractual services. Mr. Chairman, there are a lot of moving parts in this piece. There's a lot of changes that make up this one caption that's presented in the budget. And with your permission, if I could just refer you back to that PowerPoint, I'll try to explain what's going on underneath so you can, I didn't want to go through this at the joint hearing, but this is an attempt to try to explain what's going underneath that caption, what makes up that $1.2 million reduction. So if you look on slide 3, it's titled Amended Fiscal Year 20 Proposed Budget Reductions. And you see that second line, which is the caption, replace state funds with federal funds for contractual services. Those items in italics, you can see underneath those, are all the things that are going to be changing. There's a column for, state fund changes, there's a column for federal fund changes, and there's a column for total fund changes. A lot of what we're doing here is taking a state fund reduction in a certain activity and backfilling that reduction with some federal funds. Does that make sense? So let me just briefly try to mention each one. If there's any questions on these, I'll be glad to take these. The first item is to reduce the scope of a hydrological study for regional water planning and permitting. In our water supply program, we had budgeted for an update of a model of how we model the impact of water withdrawals and wastewater returns on downstream water flows, downstream water quality. Currently, right now, when we receive a permit application for a water withdrawal or for a wastewater return, we would have to build a series of cascading models. Here's the impact of this water withdrawal from this node to this node. Here's the impact further downstream from this node to this node, from this node to this node. That was how we generally modeled these permit applications for wastewater returns and water withdrawals. What we wanted was an all-in-one kind of sophisticated model with all the parameters already loaded where we can easily change one parameter and understand what the impact was downstream. We had budgeted about $3 million over 2 years to complete that work. With the budget cuts, we reevaluated what we wanted to accomplish there, we reduced the scope of the work that we wanted that model to accomplish, and we were able to reduce those costs by about half. So one of the big things we did to reduce the scope, for example, we are not going to include in that model intermittent return flows, sewer overflows, facilities that only discharge during wet weather, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see the savings. They were able to save $200,000 in state funds, some money in federal funds. We used those to backfill some of our other cuts. Does that make sense? The second item, align the budget for electronic water permitting project with the expenditures. At the direction of the General Assembly back in 2013, we began the conversion from a paper permit application process to an electronic permit application process. Everything now is, we've been working on since 2013, is anything you submit to EPD to get permission to do so, you may submit all your stuff electronically. You can log in, see what the status of your application is. This work we expect to complete this year. We had one little area left to go, and that was in our water branch. We converted to electronic application our safe dams program, our buffer variants, our non-farm water withdrawals, and our drinking water applications. We converted all that to electronic permit. We had budgeted about $638,000 in federal funds to complete those work. We were able to complete it this year already, significantly under budget, so we were able to save some of the money that we budgeted and redirect it to some of these other items. The third item you see there is 4 months of lab rent, replace state funds with federal funds. We have a lab, primarily a drinking water quality lab out in Peachtree Corners. The rent on that lab is about $2 million a year. The bulk of their work is drinking water analysis, especially for small drinking water systems. We propose taking some of those federal funds savings that I just mentioned, $680,000 of that savings, and use those savings to replace state funds and financing 4 months of rent for the lab. Number 4, there's 2 positions in our water supply program. Those 2 positions, one's a geologist and one's a program manager. They're currently funded with state funds. We're going to move those over to 100% federal funds. Again, the position stays, just the fund source changes. And items 5 and 6 is just a simple swap. Back in July, EPA offered us $228,000 in additional funding. We applied for that funding. The bulk of that funding was going to test for ethylene oxide in the Smyrna area and in the Covington area. We also had budgeted $67,000 for 2 temporary positions in our district offices. We're holding back on filling those 2 temporary positions in our district offices, and we're going to redirect those funds to pay partial salary and fringe for our land protection branch and water protection branch assistant branch chiefs. So all those things add up to that one caption. Does that make sense, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, it does. We might better hold up a minute. Has anybody got any questions on all that before we?
So all that nets out to that state funds change that's in your tracking sheet.
Okay, hold on just a minute. Representative Prince.
Thanks, Commissioner. We talked about the 2 positions converting basically from state funds to federal funds. Are those federal funds already?
Yes, sir. That sheet shows you where we pulled those federal funds from. So those federal funds exist. They were being used for other purposes, and we redirected those back to
Okay.
the state.
So you just redirected. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Smith.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and all the work y'all are doing of late. To reassure the public, can you go again over your direction to ethylene oxide monitoring? Or
Sure. We have been monitoring ambient air concentrations of ethylene oxide in the Smyrna area, in the Covington area, and we just started in the South Fulton area as well. This is related to ethylene oxide releases from medical sterilization facilities. Madam Chair, we've also been monitoring what we call background concentrations. In other words, the quality of the air, the concentrations of ethylene oxide in areas where there's no medical sterilizing facilities. And we've been doing that down at General Coffee State Park in Douglas, as well as in South DeKalb, in a monitoring station in South DeKalb. All that work is expensive. Some of that cost has been offset, as I said here.
and a follow-up? So you're not changing anything except how you're funding it, but you're continuing the
Oh,
program?
absolutely. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to, that's what I wanted out there.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank
This is
you.
a new expense. This is not something we were previously doing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Chairman Purple.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here and for your presentation and for the explanation for the cuts that we're looking at. The particular program, and I forget which one it was, that was a 3-year. I think it was the withdrawal, the 3-year program that you were looking at one of these cuts from. In order to meet the budgeting needs and the cuts, we basically changed the scope.
Correct. Reduced a little bit. Again, nothing major. We could not include the intermittent discharges, but
Okay. Well, and that's the thing I'm wanting to make sure that. So I want to make sure our research is sound, that the money that we're spending actually is efficiently spent. I certainly want that. You know, I know pi is 3.14, but if you want to get technical, you could go a pretty long way on those numbers to get an absolute, a lot more definitive absolute number of pi. I want to make sure that what we're doing in research in scaling back the scope is still going to accomplish the outcome and the detail that we need, and not overly sacrifice the research just to meet our budget needs.
and we absolutely feel that's the case for our reductions. Again, we very carefully prioritize everything we do, and again, looking for those opportunities where we can take some savings that will have the minimal amount of impact on what we have to do every day.
Okay.
The reason we did this, we wanted to redo this hydrological model, was it makes our permitting decisions faster. We don't have to do these cascading models that I've done before. And again, we can still accomplish that. We're just reducing the scope a little bit.
So, Director, on these federal funds,
Yes, sir.
I assume they have zero restrictions because you're using them for a lot of different things.
They're not fungible for anything you want to. We have to be careful. For example, the lab federal funds, we have to free up drinking water revolving funds, because that's an appropriate use to use at the lab, which the primary activity of the lab is sampling drinking water systems for contaminants. So yes, we were very careful to ensure that when we take federal funds from one, that we're backfilling something that is an eligible expense.
Okay, which I mean, I know we're only really responsible for the state funds here, but I guess it brings the question to start with, you know, why weren't we doing it before?
Well, again, the activities that we're not going to do, they're important. They're just a priority thing. It's more important to continue to do the others. Does that make sense? I mean, we were doing all of these things because we thought they were important, but we had to prioritize. And that's why we ended up switching funds. We switched funds from a lower priority to a higher priority.
Okay.
We wouldn't want to spend funds for anything that is not essential.
Okay. And how much of your budget was federal funds?
25%.
25%. So it's going to stay at 25%.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, one of those changes, that $67,000 I mentioned, and Aaron just reminded me, it was due to an increase in federal funds. But so we just swapped that out. We had budgeted with an increase to hire 2 temporary positions, and instead we switched that to 2 existing positions.
Okay. And I assume if, God forbid something awful was to happen at the federal government level and the government shut down and things get crazy, are we going to be able to continue providing a lot of the services? And
Weathered shutdowns before, so.
okay. But were we using this amount of federal funds to operate the
Yeah,
vital?
we've always had a substantial amount of federal funds in our budget.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody else?
I still have the big budget ahead, but it's much shorter.
Okay. Think you good to move forward?
Okay. In the big budget, I have it on my page 17. I'm not sure. Okay.
That's correct.
Again, start off with Environmental Protection Program 34.3. 34.3.1 in the big budget is a statewide change to TRS contributions. We do have one employee who's a participant in TRS, and that's an adjustment for that one employee. 34.3.2 is another statewide change. That is a statewide GETS contract adjustment where OPB has reduced $35,350. 34.3.3 is the governor's pay rate for full-time employees making under $40,000. This is the state funds portion. And just to anticipate the previous question you have, Mr. Chairman, we have about 186 of our 700 employees, about 25%, who would be eligible.
Okay.
And it makes a big deal for us. A lot of our environmental, especially starting off, our environmental compliance specialists meet that threshold, and that would be a big boon to us. Again, this is the state funds portion. I know there's been some talk. This is not the full portion, but we've reviewed our budget and we intend to implement this increase for all of our eligible employees.
Okay.
34.3.4, again, this is going to be very similar to the fund swap I talked about before, discussed in the amended budget. This is the fund swap for 21 is on slide 5 in your deck. Again, a lot of the same items. Again, the hydrological study I mentioned, that's the savings of $781,000 in federal funds. Again, that we completed the electronic water permitting project that I discussed in the amended budget. We were able to take the full amount of federal fund savings that we had budgeted, $319,000. Again, that same lab rent, 4 months of lab rent, we moved that over to federal funds instead of state funds. Slight change on the next item, replacing state funds with federal funds. Now it's for 4 positions instead of 2. We added, in addition to the program manager and the other, I can't recall the other position, but we added 2 more, which is another environmental compliance specialist and an engineer. So that's 4 total positions we're swapping out state funds with federal funds. And the last item is something new, and I do want to mention this. We have a contract, we have multiple contracts with the U.S. Geological Services for water quality sampling. For a number of years, this particular contract is focused here has been forward funded. In other words, in the current fiscal year, we would pay for the next fiscal year. What we're doing in 21 is withholding that payment. So we'll be no longer forward funding. We'll be paying for 22 and 22, 23 and 23, 24 and 24. Does that make sense? Now, that will create a hole in our budget in 22, but we're going to deal with it in 22, and I'm confident we can address that. But normally we pay for it the year before, so we're taking that out and we'll have to address it then. 34.5 is reduced travel expense, the same $100,000 in state fund. The big budget does have changes to the trust fund programs. Let me talk about those for a moment. If you skip down to the hazardous waste trust fund program, which is 34.5. If you don't know about the hazardous waste trust fund program, these are funds to remediate abandoned sites that are on the state hazardous site inventory. These funds are used to reimburse local government for municipal landfills that are leaking that are on the hazardous site inventory. It's used for emergency actions associated with the release of hazardous substances, and it pays for the administration of the Hazardous Site Response Act. As this committee knows, the trust fund is associated with 2 types of fees. The first fee is tipping fees at landfills across the state. There's currently, under current law, tipping fee for every ton deposited at a landfill in the state. EPD collects 75 cents. The second form of revenue are fees on companies that generate, manage, and store hazardous waste, the so-called hazardous materials fee. Those fees we collect are remit back to the Treasury. This committee will then appropriate fees to the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund. Last year, House Bill 220 reduced the solid waste tipping fee from 75 cents per ton to 51 cents per ton, effective July 1, 2020. So starting next July, the revenue we collect goes from 75 cents to 51 cents per ton. Item 34.5.1 proposes allocating 100% of the new projected tipping fee revenue into the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund FY21 base budget. So that's why you see that adjustment. The base budget increases from $4 million to $8.3 million, and that reflects full 100% appropriation of the tipping fees associated with the reduced tipping fees that are associated with the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund. That can be complicated, so I'll pause there for a second to see. No?
Hold on. Madam Chair.
Thank you for your presentation, and yes, it is complicated, and the conversations about this are complicated because in the minds of the general public, the 100% was what it should have been last year, and they've not quite understood that the fund amount has been reduced, but it's being 100% funding.
Right.
So can you repeat that again so we can get that out there?
The tipping fee that the state collects will go from 75 cents per ton to 51 cents per ton. This budget adjustment that you see in 34.5.1 corrects the EPD base budget, the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund base budget, to reflect 100% of the projected collections of the reduced fee in fiscal year 21.
One more question? Yes. If we're able to change with legislation and bring it back up to where it was, it would not be applicable till next year, at which point in time it would be considered for, it goes to the general funds, and
That's
then it
It's
is,
up to this committee to decide.
okay. So this is a stay tuned.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Barr.
Yes, sir. And you said this is the 8.3 is projected, correct?
That's correct. Off the tipping fees.
Correct. So that's not a hard number.
That's correct.
So that's our best guess.
That's our best guess, using past volumes of waste deposited at municipal solid waste
Right.
landfill for what it would be in 21, but yes, it is a projection.
And I have seen some of your charts in the past where, you know, we kind of have averaged out what we have spent over the years. Some years, you know, we have an incident and it spikes. In just kind of in your realm, is this a good projection? Do you think we will be? What I'm asking is this a good number going forward, looking back over the years?
So for the hazard, there may be a different answer to the solid waste trust fund, which I'll talk about in a moment. But for the hazardous waste trust fund, again, I talked about it's used to remediate abandoned sites.
Right.
On the HSI. We can't do all those abandoned sites at once, so we prioritize. And this amount of money will fund adequately both our program, our reimbursement of local governments for leaking landfills, as well as address those priorities for remediation that we have for items on landfill.
Very good.
Sites on the HSI.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right.
And the last budget item is under the Solid Waste Trust Fund, Program 34.9. The Solid Waste Trust Fund program, this are funds for our scrap tire regulatory program. It's used to clean up abandoned scrap tire piles. A lot of this, some of these, we clean up scrap tire piles directly. Other times we reimburse local governments. Your local government may have had a scrap tire amnesty day. That's funded through this program where people can bring in their scrap tires for disposal. And it also assists with abandoned landfills as well. This fund, or the fees associated with this fund, are the $1, currently $1 fee charge for each replacement passenger tire sold in the state. Last year, HB 220 reduced the replacement passenger tire fee from $1 to 38 cents per tire, effective July 1, 2020. 34.9.1 under the Solid Waste Trust Fund trues up the base budget for the Solid Waste Trust Fund with the projected collections from the reduced tire fee. So if you add that 26,758, you'll get a new base budget of $2.8 million, and again, that's what we project to collect from the replacement tire fee in fiscal year 21. Last item, 34.9.2, is the transfer of a contract supporting the Keep Georgia Beautiful Foundation from DCA to funding through the Solid Waste Trust Fund. That's a $175,000 contract, and again, that will be funded through trust fund dollars. Mr. Chairman, that's our budget, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Chairman?
Thanks, Chairman. I want to ask on that, the tires, who actually does that? Who actually does whatever's done with them? I mean, the dollars collected, and then are they all taken in one place, and they're
We have recycler that we contract with. We have folks dispose them, chop them up and reuse them and things like that. So we have multiple contracts. You're talking about how tires are disposed.
I mean, is there any revenue at all that comes from that? I know that sometimes it's my understanding that sometimes it's used for compost or different. Maybe even I've heard it's used and it can be used in
Playgrounds.
Playgrounds, stuff like that. Is there any revenue that comes from that?
It's all incorporated into the cleanup. So when we bid out for cleanup fees, that's all included in that price. So if you net out what sort of economic benefit. In other words, we don't collect, hold them, and then sell them. It's all in one contract.
Well, that particular item right there, I mean, I guess that would be pretty predictable how much that would be every year, right? Because, I mean, I would imagine about the same amount of tires.
The number of passenger tires sold is a little harder to predict.
Is it?
than
Okay.
Tons of municipal solid waste.
Okay, I thought it'd be easier. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Chairman Hill?
Yes. Thank you, Director. What's the price now per tire? 38 cents? What's it down from $1?
$1 to 38 cents, yes, sir.
Okay, that's a big drop.
Effective July 1, 2020.
Okay, big drop.
Another question, I guess, on the federal funds.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming they come from EPA?
Largely. Some come from DOT.
Okay. All right, and I know on our tracking sheet, it says we're replacing federal funds for contractual services, but yet we're reducing scope, we're paying employees, we're doing a lot more than...
A more accurate caption would be reduced funds for contractual services, and I can give you the amount. Or swap funds for personal services, and I can give you the amount. I mean, certainly there's a lot of different things other than contractual services that are embedded in that work.
Okay. All right, Chairman Barr.
On the contract that we paid a year ahead and now we're going to start paying in that year, did that affect that contract in any financial way? Are we now paying more for that contract? If I'm that contractor, I'm maybe be a little concerned about that.
It's a contract with a federal government entity.
It's okay.
There's none of that. It's better for me to get money earlier than later, therefore I'll give you a break.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Number 8, Chairman Perkle.
Thank you. One question that Chairman Hatch and I were just discussing and talking about regarding the change from $1 to 38 cents per tire in the solid waste, not solid waste.
That's correct.
Yeah, the Solid Waste Trust Fund. So there are unintended consequences all over this great state and the things that we do. And do you anticipate, or are you seeing, since we have drastically cut the fees for our used tires, that Chairman Barr might not be putting on his car anymore, the slick tires on your car? Are we seeing these things coming into the state from neighboring states might have higher?
The big challenge we faced, and this is apart from the dollar fee or 38 cents, is internet retailers, ensuring that we are able to capture the fee for internet retailers. I think we do a good job with the big retailers. Some of the smaller ones, that's a lot more it's a lot more difficult. But that's been the big challenge, more so than the out-of-state. Does that make sense? There's a lot of internet retailers, and again, the large tire retailers, they do collect the fee and remit back to us, but it's whack-a-mole.
Okay.
And maybe Glenn was here. She could talk about that challenge.
Oh, talk
But,
to me.
but it's a challenge because, we're collecting revenue and that's not really our area of expertise, but we do the best we can.
All right. Anybody else? Well, Director, I think that's it
Thank you,
for
Mr.
now.
Chairman.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Next, we've got Department of Revenue, Commissioner Curry. Come on down. For the committee, while they're coming up, we're going to be on page 19 of your amended track sheet. And page 21. On your 21.
Good afternoon.
Hold on just a minute, Commissioner, make sure everybody's got everything. Everybody got their pages? All right, floor's yours.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be with you today. Given this presentation, I'd like to be given the opportunity to do like a 20,000-foot view, and we'll transition to your track sheets and drill down if you have any questions. I gave this presentation to the Joint Appropriations Committee last Tuesday. When tasked with a budget reduction, we tried to bucket our handed out some documents before we get started.
Commissioner, we got some technical difficulties right here. I was just told nobody can hear you on TV. We may need to,
See if I can direct it and maybe we can pick it up.
no.
Turn on 1 and 2.
Want to see if that helps? Can you pick me up on TV now? 1, 2, 1, 2.
We'll find out.
He said, I think he just gave you a thumbs up.
Thumbs
I
up.
think we're okay.
I'll try to speak a little louder in this direction.
Okay, thank you.
Ken Nash, our CFO, handed out a couple of documents to you. These go hand in hand with your tracking documents. So if you've got any questions, we'll try to correlate the two. I brought those so you can take them back, and I know this is a lot of information. The Department of Revenue is very dynamic. It's got a lot of moving parts, and I don't expect anybody, unless you come from the department, to fully understand everything we do. I've been there 8 months, and I'm still surprised every morning at the quality of employees and the service that we provide, because there's so many moving parts. So from this point, do you want to ask questions and me try to answer those questions? Do you want to follow down your tracking document? How would you like to proceed?
Let's take a few questions real quick. I got some lights up here. Chairman Smith.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and welcome to the world of the Department of Revenue.
Thank you.
I'm getting some questions from some constituents regarding tobacco settlement funds. And one of them is there an expiration date to this? It wasn't to be continuous. And then the second question is, are the funds being appropriated, or do they just go to the general funds and are appropriated that way?
Every dollar we collect goes to the Treasury. So I'm going to get back to you. I'm not certain exactly what funds you're talking about. But everything we collect flows through to the Treasury.
Okay, so the tobacco settlement funds came about several years ago with lawsuits from the state of Georgia, and the funds that came to the state, or any of the states, we're one of several states, it was intended, the purpose for the funds was to help patients who are suffering from tobacco use, education programs, and such as that. So at that time, we knew that this would not be a continuous resource to the state of Georgia. So the question is, what is its lifespan, and how long is it to continue, and are any of the funds going to health care handling or remediation?
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask for the opportunity to get back to you.
That's fine. I'm sure that, Mr. Chairman, just for the committee as a whole?
Yeah.
So it could go to our chairman?
Okay,
Thank you.
All right. Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the items that you mentioned was you're going to see some savings from the from IT reductions from the old system, the gratis system. Since we're on drives now, and we have spent a boatload of money on the drive system. My understanding, though, that it was as almost, my son's he don't like to call himself a programmer, but I don't know, when you type on the computer thing and code pops up, that seems like what you do. That they come out buggy a little bit. And
Come out what?
buggy.
Buggy, okay.
I think that's a technical term. That it was that we were running our old system concurrently with a new system to make sure that the gratis system along with the drive system to make sure. Is that not correct?
Well, we were running in test mode. We were sending these tax commissioners. You're talking about a completely brand new system where gratis was online for 20 years. We were offering classes. So there was a test module, but it was never running parallel or gratis in the real world. That's why we shut down the Memorial Day weekend. I don't know if you remember, but we shut down on a Friday. All the tax commissioner offices across the state, they shut down on the Friday, some Thursday afternoon, to start making this changeover. There was never a time where they were running parallel.
Okay.
But they were in test mode, so tax commissioners could come and learn the system because it was a brand new system. It was web-based. The old gratis system, if you went up there and looked at the screen, it looked a lot like DOS. You had your little cursor blinking, and you had to, it was very antiquated. But no, there was never a time when they were running parallel in the system live.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. So because the other is a Unix server. It is kind of old stuff. So the $3 million in savings should not impact our ability to deliver a quality product for the people on the county level, our tax commissioners, that are in fact de facto agents for the state. They collect money from the state. I do not want to make it difficult for them to do their job. I know with a new system, there's always difficulties, but I want to make sure that they're collecting money for us. And I want to make sure that we look after them as you were formerly in their shoes.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. I formed an advisory board. The motor vehicle division director, Brett Bennett, also formed an advisory board with tax commissioners. We want to hear firsthand. We don't want them getting frustrated. We want to hear them firsthand what issues you're having. We have a local government services board. We have the county ACCG and GMA and tax commissioners and the assessor's office. They all come together and share their frustration points with us. Like any new launch, when Drives first started, there were some bugs. It wasn't smooth. The Drives was 80% standard out of the box. 20% of it was Georgia focused. So it was at 20% we had developers and IT folks on trying to work out the bugs. But as much as you try, you're not going to hit it 100%. So when we roll the Drives out, there were a few bugs with it, but I will tell you the tax commissioners that spent the time invested in what they call the sandbox. The sandbox was a test unit. You go in the sandbox and you work through address changes and you work through issuing tags, and it was like a live model, but it was in test mode. Those tax commissioners in the offices, they sent employees through the test. They didn't have much of a problem at all. We did have, and yes, I was tax commissioner for 10 years, and like any organization, you're going to have your overachievers and you also going to have a few underachievers. We had a few underachievers. I don't mind telling you, we had a few people that did not spend the proper amount of time in test mode. They were the ones having the biggest issue. But Drives is so much better than Gratis ever was. And it's the way of the future. It is, for those tax commissioners that have spent the time, again, training, they love it. They love it. And we don't have the issues that we had Memorial Day weekend. We're 8 months into the system. It's far better today than it was the day we rolled out. And again, we never had them live next to each other. We had test mode, we had Gratis. Memorial Day weekend, we turned Gratis off, went live with Drives. You're not convinced?
That is the most positive thing I've heard about the Drive system from you. It was not from the people that I'm talking to back home. So
I'll tell you what. Where do you call home? What county? What area?
let's just say I'm dead snap dab in Nat country.
Okay. Anywhere below Macon then. I give my personal cell phone number out constantly. If they're having issues, or if an individual taxpayer is having issues, I don't mind you giving them my phone number. I will give it out now. If you got a pen handy, I'll give it out. I do not mind taking a phone call from a taxpayer who's having frustration points. I know that's odd that somebody in my position would do that, but when I tell you I want them, I don't want anybody getting frustrated. If they are being frustrated, we need to find a solution to find out what's going on. My cell phone number is 678-672-7456. 678-672-7456. I would love to hear what experience they're having if they're frustrated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairman Hatchett, do you have a...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have we been informed of what the 32 actual positions are that have been eliminated?
Okay.
Do we have, I mean, we may have it, I'm just kind of asking.
It's on the form.
We have it? Okay.
Well, we just got it prior
Okay.
to the
meeting?
Meeting.
Okay, good. The other question I have involves, you mentioned the servers and how you've eliminated these servers and everything. I've had experience paying my sales tax businesses online. Is that affecting the speed of any of that? I just question, because sometimes they're definitely faster than other. So that's my question.
The speed of the service on
Oh,
the
when
server
you
service?
go online to pay your sales tax and file the reports and everything, is it affecting the speed
I've not
of
seen
the
anything,
access?
but I've not-
You hadn't heard
I've
anything?
I've
Okay.
not point blank asked that question, but I've
Okay.
not heard anything about it. This is the first time hearing.
And it may be different servers. I don't know. Just wondered. Thank you.
All right, I think that's all we got right now. We might better try to get back on the track sheet and
Okay?
get some stuff out. I think we got a lot of changes. So.
Where would you like to start?
Let's
You want to start on your sheet or the one I handed out, because they they're related to one another.
well, why don't we just get on the budget track sheet
Okay?
and kind of walk through some of the changes there, and we can go ahead and just start with the amended page 19.
There's a number at the very top, 198 million on the far right.
That's right. That may provide a little more clarity to some of the 20,000 foot view cuts that you were talking about.
I understand. When you look at departmental administration, you just want to go down each line item?
Yes.
Departmental administration, 42.1. If you'll drop down to 42.12, when you look at the sheet that we handed out, the first column on the left, you'll see an amount of $96,000. That's where that reduction came from. It came from admin. It was, there's a total amount to the far right of $788,000. But for line item 42.12, $96,000 came from the admin division. You follow me? On the FY21, correct?
No,
No,
amended.
Amended? Yes. All right, that's right, $96,000. I was on the right sheet. If you go down to 42.13, reduce funds for computer charges to reflect savings from the transition to the state's time reporting enterprise system. 42.13 is the third column over. You see $46,617. And again, we can go down to every subsection point if you need to, but each number you have here lines up, and the columns start at 42.1 on the left. You got 0.2, 0.3 all the way to the right, and a total amount to the far right.
Well, why don't you just kind of walk through the track sheet and just kind of briefly touch on the changes, and then the members can take your sheet and.
Okay. So 42.14, reduce funds for regular operating expenses. That's $340,000 out of admin. Total is $2.9 million, but it's broken out into your sheet. So you take your sheet when you get time, take a look at it. But that's $2.9 million reduction for that area. 42.15, reduce funds for telecommunication expenses. $37,000 in the admin area. Of course, we have a flow through the flipper grant of $25 million. That's 42.21. $42.31, reflect an adjustment of agency premiums and DOAS administrative and insurance programs. That's $11,000 reduction. We also reduced one position there, it was ATD, $48,000.
Hold on a minute, Commissioner. I'm still
All right.
not. We're not in. Is it?
I'm not going with that. I'm going with the track sheet. So which one are they? Nope, no, I'm working on your track sheet. Let's go back to, let's go to 42.3, industry regulation. You see the header?
Yep.
State funds, 7.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
On the right sheet?
Yep.
Okay. Reflect an adjustment to agency premiums for Department of DOAS administered self-insurance programs. It's a reduction of $11,000. All of that total in industry regulation was $111 million. Part of that was that telecommunications we talked about earlier, landlines, Verizon phone bills, things like that. That's 42.3.5 of $17,000. Local government services. Reflect an adjustment to agency premiums for DOAS administrative insurance premiums there, $7,000. Reduced operating expenses, $66,000. Motor vehicle registration, titling. The big spot there again was gratis. You drop down to the 3 million mark. That's computer charges to reflect driver record integrated vehicle enterprise system, which is drives. The 3 million came from gratis. Struck down to OSI, Office of Special Investigations. The biggest piece of that was reduce the funds of contractual services for reduced call center assistance, $110,000. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can turn the sheet to tax compliance. There you have your 10 vacant positions of $608,000. Under that, you see the floor consolidation, losing one floor this year for $330,000. You have the $2 million for reduce of the contractual services for the PCAs, the private collection agencies. We don't have to pay that out. We're doing that in-house, rescoring the delinquent tax cases and handle this in-house. Reduce the telecommunication expenses of $398. All right, we'll go down to the tax policy, 4292. Reduce funds for 2 vacant positions, $146,000. That's the largest portion there. Go down to taxpayer services, 4210. Reduce the funds for regular operating expense of $200,000. Excuse me, that's $687,000. The 3 positions were $201,000. Yes, sir.
Just how did you do that?
How did we do it?
687,000 just for operating. What did you do? Just curious.
All right, let's move it over here to this other sheet. That's why I handed this. This gives greater detail than your track sheets. So when you talk about $682,000,
I'm just curious.
There was a 1099. The 1099G. The forms, the 1099G forms, we no longer mail out the postage and printing for those. And that 1099 INT forms I talked about earlier,
Okay.
that was over 620-something thousand. Any of these numbers on the left correlate to our sheets we handed out.
Okay, we can keep
More
going.
questions? And last, the 4210.6, reduce the funds for contractual services to reflect savings from reduced utilization of tech services, 1.2.
All right, let's hold up right there just a minute. Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to ask you a question. I think I used to know this, but I don't know it anymore. On these vacant positions, you've had a number of vacant, and that's not just you, but throughout the budget, but you've got a number of vacant positions that you have now taken off, which reduces that amount of money off. You probably have, I mean, I would imagine you have vacant positions that you just haven't filled yet, that you haven't put on here to take that amount of money off. Is that right?
We eliminated most of our vacant positions. But I'll tell you, for example, we had an opening in compliance, audits. Had 37 people apply. You have to take a test. Had 37 people apply for that position.
Right.
We had 5 people show up. 1 person passed the test.
Yeah.
So we got a great job market. The flip side of the coin is we got a great job market. It is increasingly difficult to find quality employees. We've been operating without people in these positions so long.
Right.
It's our new norm. That example I've just given you is not an outlier. That's something that happens quite frequently. Call center employees, frontline employees. We get some people that apply. They may or may not show up for the interview. If they do, odds are they're not going to be able to pass the test or pass the interview.
Well, I mean, I'm not picking on you. I'm just trying to understand. So if you have you have a number of them that you've reduced the in this case the amended budget by that much money. But if you have if you have say a vacant position that you haven't taken off because you anticipate filling it, I mean something you need, but that never happens. It never does get filled. What happens to that? What happens to that funding that's actually in the budget?
If we don't use it, it goes back to the state. At the end of the fiscal year, it just goes back to Treasury. It gets wiped clean. I mean, we don't. We may carry over that position in the budget next year. In this case, we're not. But what I'm saying is, if it's in your budget, in your plans, you get the money appropriated to you. But that was part of our reduction. We don't seem to be able to hire the right type of person for the Department of Revenue right now, or it's extremely difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're doing a great job. Nothing again. I'm just trying to understand because that number is still on. I mean, that number is still. If you don't fill it, it's still in the budget. That amount of money.
Well, and that's where I think we leverage technology. We started leveraging technology years ago, and it's shown great returns. Representative Black asked me Tuesday what the return on investment was for auditors and collectors. And for tax compliance, in 2016, we had a 12.35 ROI on each individual. Today, we've got a 25 ROI on that same person. 2016, for tax collections, a staff agent, revenue agent 1, had a 24.86 return on investment back in 2016. Today, we got a 36.48. We're using that technology, we're leveraging that technology to improve what we do. That's part of that doing away with private collection agencies. Years ago, we felt like we needed that extra help. Today, we feel like we've got a model in place that we can do that in-house and do a better job.
Yeah. I know that y'all have made, over the years, made some great technological advancements over there. I do know that. And we put a great amount of money into it, too, over the years.
You have, and I can show you that money was well spent.
I'm sure. Thank you.
Chairman Barr.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hey, I'm just very appreciative of your openness and trying to help us out here. Going to a couple of most of my questions revolve around what you partially answered. You're moving forward toward technology with personnel cuts, but taxpayer services, being taking care of our constituents up here, the reduce of funds for personal. Let's see, we have 3 positions. How many? And that may be a too technical. How many folks in that? What is that? The three folks. What does that do to the overall team? I mean, is that a 100-person department, or is that a
About Total,
10
we've got
person.
941 full-time employees, and what's assigned to Taxpayer Service Division, maybe I should know that, but I don't.
No, I
Um,
just didn't know if you had anybody who might know.
170 in Taxpayer Service Division.
Okay, that makes me much more at ease. Thank you.
Representative Prince.
All right, thank you. And you may have answered this, but my concern was the telecommunication expenses that you've been able to reduce in each. Are you stopped using telephones now?
No, sir.
And because and I tell you from the end user side, sometimes I have to call a couple of government agencies, and I tell you it just sometimes hurts me when I have to get an answer machine to push this number to go to that number to go to that number, and I can never get anybody on the phone because they always push me back to zero. So
When I got hired on as the Revenue Commissioner, that was our first initiative to improve the call center. I'll be honest, our call times were not very good. We've made drastic improvements. We even reached out to the private sector, went to Home Depot's call center, got ideas from them. Reached out to Stephanie Aponte as part of the governor's staff. She comes from a private industry, has a background in both sides. Asked her to come in and take a look, give us advice on how we can improve it. And we've made drastic improvements to that. But to answer your question, though, where these savings came from is, I've already mentioned we're going to eliminate one floor this year, 2 floors next year. We've got offices in space that nobody's occupying, so we can consolidate. And we're paying for a telephone sitting on the desk that no one ever answers. So, and those aren't cheap. So you take all that together in an agency this large, and it makes a pretty big impact.
All right.
That's the phone you've been calling? When I keep calling. Call the number I gave out about 5 minutes ago.
Big flag on you right away.
I got a cell number now. So. That's right. You got the right line.
I think that's all the questions right now. Why don't we run through the 21 highlights real quick, and then I'm sure we'll have some more questions.
Okay. I got the impression that amended didn't flow through. I was a little bit confused. So again, if I get to a spot and I lose you, just please stop me. I want everyone to be clear on what we're talking about. It's going to look very similar to what we just went through. A lot of these we've already talked about, but if you go to the FY21 at 4212, again, this is the reduce the GTA contract with them, $96,000 for that particular department. 2 vacant positions and savings from the payroll. That had an impact, a huge impact, $340,000 there, savings to the agency. Telecommunication, again, expense to telephones. Out of this department, $52,000. Of course, you've got your forest land protection grant, that's a flow through. Industry regulation, your GETS contract, $46,000. You had one position, basically $61,000 we eliminated. The other 3 there, reduced funds for regular operating expense, reduced funds for computer charges reflect savings, and the telecommunication, all about $25,000 apiece. We drop down to local government services. The biggest impact there was probably the GETS contract, $29,000. Of course, you have another one there for $25,000 for the payroll we swapped over, moving away from Kronos. Motor vehicle and title registration, again, the GETS contract, $92,000 there. 6 vacant positions of $344,000. And the gratis elimination of $3 million. OSI took their hit with the GETS contract of $28,000. 1 vacant position of $66,000. And the last on that first page, reduced funds for computer charges to reflect savings from the transition of the timekeeping, another $25,000. If you flip to the second page of your track sheet, The big hit there was $132,000 we gave back through the reduction of contract services. This was the call center, the vacant positions. Tax compliance, reduced funds for GTA, $324,000. This is part of that server reduction. 29, we reduced 29 vacant positions of $1.4 million. The real estate, consolidating space again, $660,000. And the private collection agencies, along with some technology services, $4 million. You come down to tax policy, 4294, reduced funds for 2 positions of $236,000. Of course, timekeeping again at $25,000. Operating expense $27,000. Telecommunications, they're getting Wi-Fi's, Verizon phone bills, landlines, $11,000 for tax policy division. Taxpayer services division gets contracts $137,000. Reduce the funds for personal services. This is 4210-3. Reduce funds for personal services to reflect savings from the realignment of duties of 5 positions. $400,000. We reduce the regular operating expenses to $687,000. That was part of that 1099G. Reduce funds for contractual services to reflect savings from reduced utilization tech services. 1.2. And that wraps up FY21.
All right, anybody got questions? I guess the first one I want to ask is, I know last week on the tax collection contracts, how much money are they bringing in?
Collections, I don't have the, I suppose this is probably for FY19. They brought in $10.8 million. We paid out nearly $1 million in commission because they get 8.9%, just under 10% commission to the private collection agencies. So they collected $10.8 million for us. We paid out $965,000. The state of Georgia received $9.8 million in tax revenue. That was through 3 different private collection agencies.
Okay, so I mean they got a pretty good success rate overall.
Overall, they do, but again, what we see is they're collecting the low-hanging fruit. They send a letter, person cuts off the voucher, sends it into us. We have to pay them their share because their voucher is attached to that payment. If that's all they will do, I can send a letter with a voucher, collect the same money, save the 8.9% for the state, and we're paying paying our employees anyway. So producing that letter and mailing it out is not that big of a lift.
Well, but I know we've got a lot of vacancies that we're not going to put back in, so those folks are gone, and I'm assuming the people that we're keeping on are already doing lots of different things.
They are.
So are we saying we're going to ask them to do more for the same amount of money, and we know they're going to do it? Because I would hate to know that we leave $1 million on the table because we
believe that we've got a good model. And Chairman Watson, we love a good challenge. But I don't believe we'd go down this path unless we were convinced it would bring back fruit. Again, this is low-hanging fruit that these private collection agencies are capturing. If it's just a simple letter, it's not that hard to print a letter, automatically stuff an envelope, throw in the mail. There's not a lot of time that goes into that. It's running a report, printing, stuffing, mailing. We feel strong enough about it that we can certainly give it a shot.
Well, and I know, I mean, it makes sense. I just, you know, a little baby steps, or I would feel a whole lot better when we're losing all these positions, and we're getting rid of all these contracts. I mean, you're the one that brings in all the money for everybody. So if we leave $1 on the table, then somebody down the line is going to be impacted. And I think that's my fear. Is I just want to make sure, you know, that I would feel much better about a small incremental move into trying to collect, reducing those contracts, than just saying, okay, we're going to make sure it works, and then it not work.
We also have a new scoring method that we use. In the past, those tax collectors located in Albany and Augusta and Macon and Savannah, they worked on their regional accounts. We have more businesses in the metropolitan Atlanta area. So what we're going to do is we're going to reassign some of those and give those cases to these rural areas and give them work. The workload for the regional office, I'm being told, is not as heavy as the workload for the metropolitan areas. So we can rescore, we can take the more critical, the ones that's going to have a greater return of investment, issue those out in Savannah and Macon and Albany and across rural Georgia, give them the account, and see what kind of results it produces. The last thing I want to do as revenue commissioner for 9 months, the last thing I want to do is be here next year in front of you and you say, yeah, I told you so. We're going to do everything we can to prove this method works. We were asked to make reductions, and my tax compliance director felt like this was certainly an opportunity we could show the quality of the Department of Revenue work.
And have y'all been doing any of it prior to on your own?
Sure we have. Yeah,
Okay.
He's Scott Purvis is always thinking out of the box. How can we reduce costs, become more efficient, collect more revenue? He drives up from Bibb County to Century Center on Claremont Road every day. He loves his job, and he's always willing to share great ideas.
Representative Prince, do you have a question?
Well, I think I did, but it sort of dovetailed off yours, because I was just concerned about, and I just used the tax compliance area for one. In the amended, you're going to reduce by 6 positions, and then I guess in 21 you're going down by 29 positions, and I was just wondering, okay, who's going to be left to sort of?
Well, remember, those are vacant. We don't have.
So they're not okay.
We don't have people in those positions today. They're empty chairs.
Well, and I think that's the fear, is that if you get down and you say, well, we sure would be nice if we had an extra person to stuff envelopes and send out these letters. It would be nice to be able to fill that position if that person came along, and you're not going to have that flexibility going forward. And I think that's what makes everyone a little nervous when we see these large vacancies, especially in the collections department. And I assume on the $1,000 raises, you're fully funded there. You've got enough money to make all of those raises in full to all your employees.
We're very close. Let me pull the sheet up and I'll go over it. I know you asked one of the other directors or commissioners how many full-time employees they have that make less than that amount. Was it 350? We have 358 employees. Roughly 36% of our staff fall into that bracket. So we certainly appreciate the governor doing that for our employees. We have a lot of employees that are single families. This will have a great impact to them.
Okay, and you've got enough funds to do that with everybody?
I'll about 6 or 7, but we can come up with that. That's peanuts.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, well, I know we've got a lot more information now that we can process, so we may be bringing y'all back next week just after everybody kind of walks through this spreadsheet y'all have now provided for us, that we can try to get some clarity on everything. So if nobody's got anything else, I know we've got one more presenter, so
Okay.
appreciate you being here, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I know there's a lot of information there. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
All right. All right, next we've got driver services. Commissioner Moore, come on down for the committee. We're on page 10, 10 and 10, Representative Prince is. If you'll give us just a minute here, Commissioner.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
He's a Dublin.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Well,
you, sir. I appreciate that.
Goes your easy presentation.
There goes my small questions, right?
Yeah. All right, everybody ready? All right, Commissioner, floor is yours.
Members of the committee, first, thank you all for allowing us the opportunity to come down and talk about the department's budget. As you indicated, on page 10 of your tracking sheet, you will find the Department of Driver Services. We also provided a PowerPoint that also follows the tracking sheet, and that's what I'll be speaking from, but certainly referencing any items that's on the tracking sheet. What I like to do is just first and foremost let you know what the department is doing and our performance level. And on page 2 of the presentation that I provided, it gives you just a bit of a window of what the department is focused on. We are a department first and foremost that's looking to serve our customers by issuing driver's licenses as well as identification cards. We saw face-to-face last year about 3.5 million people coming into our centers. Our goal is pretty straightforward. We want to serve 95% of our customers in 30 minutes or less. We have exceeded that for the last 3 years. I'm hopeful that your constituents are telling you when they get to the Department of Driver Services they're getting their service done efficiently, and our staff hopefully is smiling and ensuring that they have a good experience. What people don't know about the department is we also process about 1.2 million citations that come from courts each day. They're forthcoming to our location, so any of the citations or traffic offenses that occur on our roadways, those citations are processed through our office. We ensure that that information gets on the driver record. Again, last year we processed more than 1.2 million of those citations. Likewise, most people, some people, hopefully are if they need to contact us, they're contacting our contact center. We're getting about 1.2 million calls there as well. So we have a very high customer contact. We are talking to citizens every single day, and it's our goal to ensure that we represent the state of Georgia in a very professional and efficient way. On that page 2, what you'll find is a couple stats that I want you to make you aware of, because if you've gone to an airport lately, you have seen some signs that says effective October 2020, unless you get on unless you have a Real ID compliant license, you won't be able to get on a plane. So those are plastered just about every airport across the country. I think you all will be proud because this is a part of the legacy of the General Assembly in the state of Georgia. We were proactive in our efforts to become members of Real ID. Back in 2012, 98% of Georgians are Real ID compliant. 98%, 72% of the country is not compliant. So we are in a much different position than most of the country, and therefore the citizens of our state are able to enter federal buildings, get on planes without having to present a passport or go through some extra security features. We are well positioned to not only, we're 98% now, we have a plan to get as close to 100% with the existing customers that we have today. So that we expect that to be less than 20,000 by October 1st of 2020 this year. But we were sending a direct mail to those 20,000 to ensure that they know that you need to have this compliant card before you fly after October 1st, 2020. Most people don't also know that we have 8.177 million licensed drivers in our state. So we are a transient state. A lot of people have driver's license, and we have 358,000 valid CDL license holders. Very important to everything that we do in our state. Again, my goal is first and foremost to give you just a little bit of information about what the department is doing and things that we're working on. If you were to turn to page 3 on the presentation, it will follow the tracking sheet. And as listed on the tracking sheet, we have 3 program areas: our departmental administration, license issuance, and our regulatory compliance roles. The departmental administration is simply the functions in which that are not that license issuance part. It's more the support. Commissioner's office, our finance division, our HR and legal, all the supporting functions. And if we were to get to, again, line 21.1.1, you'll see a DOS insurance premium add of $5,349, and going down that tracking sheet as well as that presentation. The next item you'll see is a 21.1.2 is $11,525 reduction. In what you'll note is on the presentation we let you know how we plan to achieve that. Today, if you're an employee, primarily the most training that's done is done at our headquarters location out in Conyers. We obviously have centers all across the state. We can realize that $11,525 reduction by utilizing things like Skype and distant learning methods to allow us to reach our employees, not necessarily face-to-face, but in a technology format that will make us a little bit more efficient. In line 21.1.3 on FY 2020 amended, you'll notice the biggest reduction in the departmental administration, and that is the reduction by freezing of positions. This particular category is pursuant to 2 positions being froze, basically one being completely eliminated and another being combined for a savings of $126,814. It's a warehouse manager. And typically what we send out a lot of information. If you're a law enforcement agency and you're wanting to get a 1205 form to issue that's used for the purpose of DUI enforcement, you would get those mailings from our office. But we have been able to streamline those roles in order to reduce this position to meet the governor's recommendation. Again, the next line is 21.1.4, and it's a reduction of funds for operating expenses and telecommunications, and the amount is $27,101. Specifically, how we plan to reach this is the reduction, and these have already occurred by reducing 11 cell phones, 5 computers. To plug in a computer is about $94 a month just to have it plugged in and operating. So we're going to eliminate 5 of those, eliminate 13 landlines at about $40 a month, as well as eliminate about $12,000 in supplies. These are savings that we've already realized, obviously, or we're working toward realizing them as a part of the amended budget and the reduction of funds coming to the agency effective October 1. The next program in our office is the largest one. It's the one where we have our 67 centers focused on, again, delivering the services to our constituents, ensuring that they get licenses, whether it's a regular license, CDL, et cetera, all the ones that are needed to ensure that we have the right operators on our roadways. As we go down this particular tracking number, and we have the DOS insurance program enterprise change of 33,000. The next is 21.2.2, and that is an effort by our agency to make considerable changes in the way that we do business today. And you'll note that the reduction that we're proposing there is $654,348, and I've included, or Michelle has included, specifically where those changes will come. Today, before you get ready to come to our center, you get a renewal notice, that blue card that comes in the mail right before you go, and letting you know it's time to renew. Well, we've been able, over the last 3 or 4 years, capture emails of customers who have come into our center. So we have more than 1.5 million emails of customers, and we'll continue to get them every time a customer does a service. So rather than sending out those postcards, we're going to be sending out some emails. We hope that's a more efficient way of reaching our customer in saving, as we get to that $654,000 savings. That alone will save us roughly $144,000. So incrementally, the next is implement online reservations to reduce call volume. If you were contacting our contact center about a year and a half ago, you had to actually get an agent. Agent would find out what time you wanted to come in order to get a road test. So they're working with that customer. We have streamlined that where it's completely web-based. If you are a young driver and you want to come in for a road test, you can go on our website, and that's done electronically. We've eliminated thousands of calls into our call center for that particular function. So we're very happy, and we'll note a $25,000 reduction in that area. The next one is something that we're hopeful. It won't be popular at first, but we produce a lot of manuals. You come into our centers, you're gonna get a driver's manuals, CDL manuals, all these different manuals that we print for persons who want to come in and again get a service. We're gonna reduce that about 80%. So our goal is to turn that function into an online function. The manuals are present. They're on our website. Certainly easily can be downloaded. So what we plan to do is realize $188,000 reduction toward that $654,000 in that particular area. The next one is reduction of uniforms, phones, computers, travel, supplies. I spoke to that in the other program departmental, but specifically into this one. In the past, we provided examiners with shirts, pants, belts, shoes, essentially the entire uniform in order for them to work at those service centers. We're going to provide the shirts. So we will keep that uniformity of that departmental shirt, but we're going to let them provide the rest. And we've already started this. We got no pushback. Most people want to wear their own pants and shoes anyway. So we give them a color pattern of what they can wear, and we've not had any pushback in regards to making that particular change. The next reduction on line 21.2.3 is, this was probably the simplest of the give backs, in that this was an appropriation that you all provided to us this past session. We had not gotten the opportunity to implement it, so we just did not implement it. And that $527,000 is a part of the reduction in order to meet the governor's recommendation. The last, well, not the last, but the next item, 21.2.4, is to reduce funds for freezing vacant positions. And this is certainly one I know you all would want more explanation about. This is in our license issuance. The way that we set up our position structure in the facilities or in our centers is we have roughly 500 or so full-time employees, roughly 200 or so part-time employees, And what we had 240, I'm sorry. What we're gonna do is reduce the vacancy in the part-time about 40 positions. So that will go from 240 to 200. You might ask, are they filled today? They are not. Our average wait time last month was about 8 minutes. So 99% service level. So we're meeting our targets, and these positions have been filled. And it's a tough one to fill, because the pay is $10.25 an hour. Can you imagine in Metro Atlanta working at one of our centers at $10.25 an hour? That's tough. One of the motivations that we try to get for this particular staff group is the opportunity to move into a full-time role after a few months, and that's been successful for us, although the turnover in that particular category is still high. But once they move into the full-time role, they realize the fringe benefits that comes with being a full-time state employee, so that helps us. 12 full-time positions in this particular category will be reduced. 7 driver examiners, 1 investigator. We have a police unit who has the responsibility of investigating fraud, as well as a number of other things. We will eliminate 1 investigator, 1 IT developer in this category of reduction, 2 data entry position, and 1 project manager. Those are the specific 12 full-time roles that will be reduced in this particular line item, totaling a reduction of $1,374,971. Continuing forward in our license issuance program is 21.2.5, and that is to provide a computer and telecom funds for our DRIVES project. We are part of the DRIVES initiative, and you know, best I heard Commissioner Curry talk about it, but can you imagine, if you will imagine, most of my examiners are millennials. They come in and they get onto a computer that's a green screen and looks like a Commodore 64. And they can't arrow through anything. They have to function through. If we all remember that some years back when we had to function through a screen in order to get to the spaces that we want to get to. DRIVES for us will be a change that this organization, our agency, needs. We're through the initial kickoff phase. We are into development. We are very close to starting some testing. We'll soon be converting 997 million records in the state of Georgia from our old legacy system, mainframe system, into this DRIVE system. So we have some things to do in order to make this happen. And one of the things that we're asking for as we convert this data is additional funds as it relates to the data migration, $336,000 there. And then hardware, software, telephone and wireless for FAST. We have them currently, roughly 50 employees who are at our location, working side by side with our staff, helping us to transition. So we are needing funds in order to ensure that the laptops for training, the landlines for calling, which are just a few, not many, about 10 landlines, as well as we have the necessary things in order to make that transition continue to happen. 21.2.6 is a $50,000 savings in a lobby management upgrade that we completed back in FY19, so we'll be giving that back. And then the last request in the license issuance program, and I think we're working to ensure this is in the right program. At the moment, it's not in the right program, but the amount is correct, and that's an add of $345,000 to purchase 15 vehicles. And we provided the stats relative to the aging fleet. We have 144 vehicles. 4 are awaiting surplus. 12 well exceed the 135,000 limit, and this will help us replace those for a total reduction in the license issuance program of $1,758,058. And I'll get to the last 2020 amended program, which is regulatory compliance. 2021, we'll be able to go through that a lot faster because it's really annualizing these 9-month changes that we did and amended it to 12-month changes in 2021. But starting with the regulatory compliance in the amended 2020, again, the DOS premium, again, the reduction in technology and operating costs. We do a lot of auditing for our driver training program, our motorcycle safety and CDL compliance programs. We will reduce travel to meet these expectations and to meet this reduction. In 21.3.3, we will freeze or eliminate 1 analyst and 1 contractor to realize that $96,216 savings. And the last item, 21.3.4, is to reduce funds for operating expenses and telecommunications. That's $2,201 for 2 cell phones that have already been given up, as well as $1,200 in supplies. Total reduction for regulatory compliance of $131,000 and $131,178, and the amended reduction a little bit over $2 million, $2,449,327. Mr. Chairman, I'll pause there for any questions relative to the amended budget.
Yeah, we got a few questions here.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to the drive system, it seems to be my topic of conversation here of late. And so you actually have not gone live with that yet?
We have not.
You're still
live.
testing?
All right. Well, we're still converting. So we go live January 18, 2020.
What'd you say, 90 million?
2021.
All right, so how are the costs allocated for you for that? I don't know if you're just pulling my leg or just trying to make sure that we're paying attention, but it looks like the 2020 budget was 469 and the 2021 is 531, and if you add those together, you come pretty close to $1 million. Did you just say $1 million, and or someone said $1 million? We're going to split a portion of it in 20 when you're still not live, and a portion in 21 when you'll be partially live. How much of those costs ongoing are you going to be responsible for?
The costs ongoing, I think we have accounted for, but as you said, this is a huge project. It's not small. It's more than $100 million project in total. So what we're proposing is very small in the grand scheme of what this project is. And it's migrating a system that we've operated in our state on the driver's license side for more than 30 years. It's a mainframe. And like I said, it looks like a Commodore 64 as far as its transition. But the way that we have, the majority of the costs for drives have already been funded.
I know that we've been funding the punk out of that thing.
You have funded it, and we have been appreciative. Commissioner Curry and Revenue have been the benefit of it so far. We're just getting into phase. We kicked it off in October, so we're now in the process of their staff. Fast Enterprises working with our staff to look at our operation, to understand it, and we're right now in the development phase. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, I mean, just a quick explanation follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Would that be okay? I'm a firm believer that those that use the service should be paying for the service, and I want to make sure there's a fair allocation of this big investment that we made in there, so cost benefit we could look going forward. And it's just the number that struck out. You know, if you add the two numbers from 20 and 21, it winds up to be exactly $1 million. I didn't know if that was just a freak of nature,
I did
or
not
if that
know
was,
that. I don't know.
okay.
My budget director had
They're
known.
based on actual estimates.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're based on, I did not know that. That's good.
Commissioner, I noticed that you're using the language, freezing vacant positions.
They're not freeze. They're not freeze. They're eliminated.
They're gone.
They're gone.
Okay.
They're gone. Yeah, excuse that language. It's not freezing. It's eliminated.
Okay. Okay. All right. Chairman Smith, did you have a?
I did, but I can wait.
Okay. All right. I don't see any else. If you want to try to zip through the
Yes, sir.
the 21, I know a lot of folks here, they may be thinking about crab legs and shrimp. And,
We will get them there. We can zip through. Literally, if you have the PowerPoint, we added some in blue language, some of the ads that we're, specifically for 21, I want to talk about, obviously, the $1,000 raise. I have roughly 604 staff who qualify for that $1,000 raise. And I heard Commissioner Curtis said it represents 36% of his organization. It represents 83% of mine. So many of my staff are below that threshold. So we're very appreciative of the consideration of that change. In many cases, it's more than what we've seen in incremental raises of 1 or 2%. It may be 5% increases for some of our frontline examiners who only make $22,600 a year. So it's considerable. We love on better years to come back and talk about what these folks should be making, but it will be helpful, and I want to speak directly to those. So
do you, before I forget, do you have enough funds to give everybody on staff a $1,000 raise?
We heard you ask that question. What we're going to do is we're going to look real closely. We'd like to send back an email letting you know specifically if all of our staff are covered.
Okay.
Because we realized it was the position count was taken in a period of time, and we're not sure at the moment, but we will let you know.
Okay.
So in the 2021, if I could sum up literally what the changes are, is the addition of the funds related to the $1,000 increases for full-time employees who make less than $40,000, and it is one of the things in order to reach the additional reduction can be found on page 8 of my presentation, and I like to talk about it for just a moment because we'll have some legislation that goes along with this. Right now, we send out as an agency more than 212,000 pieces of mail certified this past year. More than half of it comes back on return. We wasted, and I hate to use that word because I'm a person who growing up in Dublin, Georgia, realizes the value of every dollar, but $547,000 of mail that nobody ever picked up. We are proposing in this session a bill that would eliminate our requirement to send some mail, not all, but some mail certified, so that notice is still provided. We'll be providing those customers, but there are at least 2 categories, maybe more. For example, a failure to appear. If I can go through that real quickly. So I'm a person who gets a citation on the side of the road. Officer writes me a citation, gives me that citation, tells me when my court date is. You've been noticed. That person again is given a letter probably from the court letting them know, hey, you got to show up on this particular date and for your hearing. They've been noticed. They don't get that. Not all of them get that. They don't always get that. Yeah. So they don't always get that. And I'm not saying that is perfect, but you've been noticed when you got that citation. Hopefully you've been noticed by the court. And then the court notices you basically when you don't appear. And they tell you, hey, we're issuing a failure to appear. It's going to go to DDS. And then what we do is, again, notify you, and we have been doing a certified mail, you've not come to court and satisfied this citation. We're not talking about not noticing people. What we're trying to do is realize the savings that's obvious. I mean, we have $547,000 that literally is in return mail in my office that I have to shred. So we're hoping to produce legislation that will move toward portions of items not needing to be sent certified mail to meet that $1,000 that's needed to realize the reduction that we have here. Outside of that, the changes track from 9 months to 12 months from the other areas in our budget. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
So what happens if you don't get your legislation passed?
I've got to cut real positions. Real people, not vacant positions, real people. And I don't, like I told you, I've told you in personal meetings, we've been very fortunate to have an expectation of what we want our driver services to be over the last few years. I would not want us to go back as a state and have longer lines that we've had in the past.
Okay. Anybody else? You must be ready to go eat shrimp or something.
Great presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
We'll be in touch. All right. Committee, that's it for today, but just an FYI, we've got room 341 scheduled for Monday afternoon. So we may be having a few folks come back in and talk again Monday afternoon. So try to keep that open. Yep. We're adjourned.